All right, we're looking at some things today that are new in the 2021 release. What we're looking at, the vast majority of it is not in any version prior to TPC Desktop 2021. We are looking at creating and editing details and groups in TPC Desktop 2021. In addition, details are only available in the professional edition. All right, so if you don't have the professional edition, you won't be able to create the details using this tool. We have had a method available to you for quite some time. And let me just point that out to you if you're not on the professional edition. If you were to go out to, hang on, I've got it here somewhere. If you were to go out to the Learning Center, if you go out to the member area and go to the Learning Center, in the Drawings Learning Center, there are two sections. There's a details section that talks about what we're talking about today in the 2021 release. There is also creating manual details, vicinity maps, plan with profile in this section down here. So that's a manual procedure. It's not what we're looking at today. Just wanted to make you aware of that. There are ways to do this if you don't have the professional edition. So back over to Traverse PC. So we're looking at a detail here that I created earlier. Notice it says that it is a group, and that's why we're looking at groups as well as details, is because details have become a function of our long-standing group function. I'm going to just delete this and I'm going to move this over here. So the first thing is what shapes can be used to create a detail. Those shapes are rectangles, rounded rectangles, circles, ellipses, polylines, and here's one to get you thinking, and that is down here, Traverse Polylines. And we'll look at that a little more in depth in just a bit. So I have six different shapes that I can create details from. Now, next question is, what space should the detail object be in? Hang on, I'm going to move this back now, if I can get a hold of it. Arg. See, little humor. Where there's a will, there's a way. All right, so what space should they be in? Because we are dealing with survey objects, the shapes for details need to be in survey spaces. We're creating a group from survey objects. If the shape is in paper space, Traverse PC will ask, when you tell it, I just right-clicked on that rectangle, and I'm going to choose New Detail. Traverse PC tells us that that's in paper space, and it's got to be in survey space. So it's asking, do we want to go ahead and do that? We'll just say yes, and it will bring up the dialog box for the new detail. All right, so it's very easy. You don't have to worry about the space so much. Traverse PC will automatically let you know about that and go on from there. Next question is, what space will the detail be in? Now, because details are associated, we associate these details with a specific area of the drawing. So the detail itself is automatically going to be in survey space, but they can be toggled into paper space if you want to. Most cases, I'm guessing you won't want to unless you're doing something a little bit different. All right, I'm going to delete this again. And we'll take a look at that dialog box that I just flew through, because that's where you're going to tell Traverse PC what you want. All right. So if I right click on this detail and choose new, or this shape that I want to use for the detail, I hit new detail. Once again, it asks me about paper space. I say yes. All right. So this brings up the new detail dialog box. Just a note to everyone, if you're not aware of this, anywhere you are in Traverse PC, if you want to know what Traverse PC expects from you, hit your F1 key. So when I hit F1 from the new detail dialog box, the help popped up on my other monitor, of course, never fails. Bear with me. There we go. Had to rearrange my other screen a bit. So this tells us what all of these different things are in the in this dialog box. What do you do with them? So if you've got questions about what is this, hit your F1 key. Now we're just going to start at the top and work our way down. So we're going to start with this section up here about captions. All right, you can turn them on or off using the caption checkbox. So if I don't have this turned on, it will not, hang on, I got to get this help topic off of my notes. There we go. So if I turn this off, it will not put a caption on my detail. All right. If I turn it on, then it's going to put whatever I have in this little section onto my detail. You can put anything you want in here. All right. Totally up to you what you put in here. You can use variables. If you're not familiar with variables, I'm going to hit my F1 key again and bring the help topic over, and I will go to search and look for variables. Had to type more than that. Using variables. This tells you what variables are available to you, and there's a lot of them here. So you can really make this caption. If you can use these variables to create your caption, that's great. All right. Let's just close that there. In addition, we have added a new variable called factored scale per inch. And this is used, pardon me, for both groups and details. You can tell Traverse PC that you want your caption to state what the scale of that detail is if you include it here. Now this has to be turned on and it has to be in here. If I delete this, all right, then I'm not going to have a caption even though this is turned on. But I can type whatever I want and I can hit that button and it'll automatically fill that in for me. All right. So you can create a caption for your detail here. Now, these do not need to be turned on or off initially, as you can turn them on or off after the detail is created, and we'll look at that when we get to the editing portion of this presentation. Next thing we have here is what layer do you want them to go on? Now, it's most likely going to be set to 0 layer when you come in. If you don't have if you haven't set up any layers, then most likely it's going to go to 0 unless you tell Traverse PC that you want to create a layer for those details. So if I do this, we create the details layer and make it the layer they will come in on. I apologize. I'm going to mute myself for just a second. Okay, sorry about that. Hopefully my sinuses will settle down here. If not, I'll have to do that a few more times. All right. Next, we'll take a look at the size of the detail right in here. There are 4 ways you can set the size of this detail. I can tell it a factor. In other words, if I want it to be twice as big as the original detail object, that's the rectangle or whatever shape I'm using. If I wanted the detail to be twice the size of the original object, I would put this to 2. And you notice, watch this over here. It has changed to 200 feet to the inch. As I update these fields, the rest of the fields will update. So I can specify it by a size, a factor, 2 times, 3 times, 1.5 times, whatever, all right? This factor would probably be determined by your original drawing scale. This drawing is at 400 feet to the inch. So if I go to 2 times, I will get a scale of 200. All right, that should make sense to you. I can also tell it a specific scale. So if I want 150 feet to the inch, I can specify that. All right. And once again, everything updates. So it's a 2.67 factor, or 2.6666 ad infinitum, ad nauseum. And notice that the height and width have updated as well. So I could enter a width for this thing. If I know I have 3 inches, I could say make it 3 inches wide. Totally up to you. And the you would set one or the other, height or width, and the other will update, and your detail will be proportional that way. Where do you get the rectangles? That's one of your draw options. I would draw a rectangle. We can look at that in just a little bit, and when we get to questions and answers, I think I'll have time for Q&A, and we can look at some stuff in more detail. Thanks, Jim. So this is how you control how big your detail is going to be. Now, a key section that may be a little more difficult to understand, we're going to take a look at this, retain. In other words, what do I want included in my detail? So we're going to take a look at each one of these. So if there is a surface on my drawing and it is also in the area of my shape, do I want that surface included in the detail? You may or may not. So if I don't have this turned on, then if there is a surface there, it will not show up in my detail. Object labels outside detail. This is probably one of the most important ones. And what this is, and you'll see it in action in a different file that I'm going to use after a bit. Let's say I've got a line label. Let's say this line label doesn't even come into this rectangle, but I've got a survey line here. Do I want that line label to be included in the detail? Very likely you do. So if it's a survey object, it could be a lot label, a line label, point label, anything like that. If it's outside the area of the detail, but the object that it is labeling intersects with, all right, the object doesn't have to be entirely in, like this line is a little more out than in, all right, that doesn't matter. The line is going to be shown in the detail. Do we want the label? That's what we're talking about here with the object labels outside detail. I'll go ahead and turn that on. Xrefs probably comes into play very rarely. If you have X-referenced something, a DWG file into your drawing, do you want those Xref objects to show in your detail? Now, I will note that if you do that, when you Xref something in, all those objects are on their own X-reference layers. Well, when the detail is created, they will all be on the details layer. All right, they will be separated from the original and will be Xrefs objects. And basically all of our survey objects will become separated from the original. So that's something that's important to know. If basically your details should be very late in your process, because if I create this detail now and then the bearing of this line changes, my detail will need to be updated. It will not update automatically. These objects are new objects in the detail. Next thing is crow's feet. If you have crow's feet turned on, these are rarely desired in the details, you know, because you're, in most cases, a detail makes it obvious what's going on. So another note about this, if you turn them on, the attributes of the crow's feet in the detail will be controlled by drawing settings, crow's feet dialog. They will not be controlled by that traverse anymore because they are now separate from that traverse. So they may look a little differently, in which case you'll need to edit those settings. Last one for retain is fills. Very likely you will want fills included, but possibly not. You can turn them on or off. Now there's one thing you need to know about fills, and that is that if you have a filled traverse or object inside the detail object area, if that filled object is not entirely within, then it will not be filled in the resulting detail. This is a limitation. All right, and we'll look at that a little bit in a bit. All right, so this is, what do I want to include in my detail? In many cases, you want everything in your detail, so you just turn everything on, except maybe crow's feet, you know. But maybe you don't want surfaces. Totally up to you here. Okay. The last option here is edit detail after it's positioned. And we'll talk about this. Basically, when you're creating a detail, you're not just going to create it and that's it. There's things that you are going to want to do to it. I want to move this label around. I want to, you know, whatever. I want to add some text. I want to do this, that, or the other thing. This just automatically puts you in edit mode once you create the detail. I'm not going to turn this on because I want you to see how it works without it. All right, it's not a big deal if you don't turn this on. You can easily edit this detail once it's created. So at this point, we've set this up for a scale of 150 feet to the inch. Metric, obviously, works metric. Okay, it's going to give us a caption of what scale it's going to come in at, so it should end up saying 150 feet to the inch. It's going to put it on the details layer, and we will include any labels that are outside the detail. I don't think there are any. I think all of our, well, this one maybe. We'll see. And we'll include any fills, but there are none in this one. We'll see that in a bit. So I'll just go ahead and choose OK. So here is our new detail at 150 feet to the inch. All right. So that's how you create a detail. And it can be from all of these different shapes, rounded rectangle, ellipse, circle, etc. Let's take a look at these shapes just a little bit now. because especially Jim, you asked, you may not have your draw toolbar displayed. You can go to the draw menu and draw. Here's all of the objects from the draw toolbar, which I have over here. All right. So let's take a look at this. First of all, I am putting them in survey space. If you're not aware of this paper space button, if it is turned on, right now it's turned on, you see it's got this little blue highlight, that means it's turned on. So anything I draw, all of these things that I put on will go in paper space. If I turn it off, they'll go in survey space. Remember, it doesn't matter a whole lot when you're creating an object for a detail, all right, because Traverse PC will prompt you on that. So you can draw a rectangle right here, ellipse, circle, polyline, all right. If you want a rounded rectangle, you can right-click the rectangle, go to its properties, or you could double-click it and go to its properties, and then you come down. All right, where? Here it is, right here, radius. Sorry. So I could say this one is in paper space, so I would be talking inches, so I could do a 1/4 inch radius or whatever. If it's in survey space, then it's going to use survey. So I'm at 400 feet to the inch, so if I want a 1/4 inch, I would put in a 100-foot radius. Okay, and that's how you get a rounded rectangle. Hadn't planned on going into that. Now, I stumbled into this. This was not intended in any way. I just tried something. We hadn't thought about it. If I want a specific shape, and in my case, I wanted an octagon, all right? So I could sit here and very carefully draw a polyline octagon, and it may or may not come out perfect. So what I did, notice this says it's a polyline, but notice it's on the TPC lines layer. If I right-click this and say Edit Traverse, what I did is I just created a spot, and then I used deflection angle and distance and created a perfect octagon. Then in the Traverse drawing settings, I told Traverse PC to draw the traverse as one continuous polyline. So what that does now is that rather than having tangents and that stuff, I now have polylines. All right, so this is a perfect octagon, just how I wanted it. And if I can't drag it because this is a survey object. All right, so I can't drag it, but I can right-click it, modify objects, and move. Just be aware when you are dealing with survey objects, if you do a graphic move like this, you are changing the coordinates. All right, so Traverse PC asks, do I want the entire traverse? And continue. I'm going to say OK. I click somewhere on it, and I move my cursor and click where I want it. And now I can use this as my detail object. Like so. Okay, so you can get some very specific shapes this way if you want something like that. Totally up to you. You can also I want to move that back. You can also, if you choose to, come in, create a detail, And then if you wanted to, when you edit the property, you can edit the properties of the rectangle, and you could tell it that, you know, heck, I don't want a border on this thing. All right? So there's lots of possibilities to you to get precisely the look you want. We all know that surveyors are actually artists. They just don't typically sell their artwork the same way. We all want things to look the way we want. All right, so we will take a look at editing groups and details. Notice I didn't say details and groups. We created a detail, but that detail, as I showed you earlier, is now a group. All right. Now, one thing you need to know about groups is that if I am simply creating a group, and hopefully you all know how to create a group, right? You take a bunch of objects like this, you select them, and then you go to the groups and blocks, and you create group or whatever it says here at that point. This is a group, so it's not giving me the option to create a group, but you know how to create a group. One of the things you need to know about groups is that you cannot put survey objects, in other words, traverse objects, into a group. That's not something Traverse PC does. Once we create the detail, it is simply a group. So editing a detail is simply editing a group. So really this section we're talking about the new methods of editing groups in TPC Desktop 2021 because it has changed. Now, there are two basic methods for editing a group. And down here, I've got some groups, all right? 75 objects in this group. Okay, 25 in that group. How do I edit any group? So this could apply to your detail, right? Two basic methods. And let's go up to the detail for this. So here's my detail. Now, I'm not in edit mode because I didn't tell it that I wanted to edit this after creating it. All right. So there are two basic methods. If I'm just moving my cursor over this and I'm accessing the entire group. Now this is different. In the previous versions, I could just go into properties of this object. It's a little different now. All right. If I wanted to move this in the previous versions of TPC, I would have to explode this group. I don't need to do that anymore. If I hold down my control key, so I'm holding my control key down, now I get on this object. It doesn't highlight the same, but I know what object I'm on. Now I can simply drag and drop this. Now there is a leader attached to this, all right? It will regenerate itself once I let go. Okay, so I can drag and drop these by holding down the control key. I don't have to explode it. This is still a group. I can hold down my control key and double click any object to go to properties. So let me get on this with a control key, and I did a control double click and went to properties. Or I could hold down my control key and right click and go to properties of this object. All right, so now you do need to hold down the control key to edit it without exploding or going into edit mode. All right. If I want to draw something and add it to this group without going into edit mode on the group or without exploding the group, then it has to be snapped to one of the objects in here. All right. So I've already got an interior angle here. Actually, I'm going to show that to you in the next file that I'm going to load up. So I'll show you that part. So just be aware that I can add things to the group if I have attached them to one of the group objects. All right, so let's say I want to go into this edit mode. This is that one from that dialog box where I didn't turn it on to automatically go into edit mode. Here's how I get to it after the fact. I can right-click the group and go to Groups and Blocks, and we have a new function here, Edit Group /Detail. Now I am in edit mode. Everything here is a part of this group. I can move stuff around, you know, edit text, do whatever I want to with this stuff. And if I add something here, so I want to add some more text to it, I could come over here and add some more text, and that will become part of the group. I can draw on here, do whatever. Be aware, anytime you are in a tool in Traverse PC, and I am in the Edit Group tool right now, you need to pay attention to your status bar, because the status bar tells you what Traverse PC expects from you. Editing group. Press Enter to finish the group edit. All right. Now, if you're working on dual monitors or multiple monitors, you will want to go to View, Format View, and turn on Private Status Bar. What this does is it adds a status bar to the drawing view itself. So if this is on my other monitor over here, all right, I'm not going to have to be looking way over here on this monitor to see the status bar. Okay? So be aware of that if you haven't turned on the private status bar, and that's available in all your views, by the way, the Traverse view, etc. Where it's usually most useful is in the drawing view itself. So I am in the edit mode. So everything I do, if I forget I'm in the edit mode and I come over and I don't know, draw a leader over here for some reason. I'm just drawing a leader to point at something else on my drawing, all right, because I forgot that I am in edit mode. Whenever I end up hitting my Enter key, that ended the command, and now that leader I drew way over there is a part of this group because I was in the Edit Group command. Okay. Now, I've messed up this group. One of the things I could do, I could hold down my Control key. I could come over here to this leader, and I could just flat delete that guy, get rid of it out of the group. So I can even delete things from this group without editing the group. We've made it much easier. You don't have to explode it, anything like that. All right, we're going to take a look at another example, a different file. All the files we're working with today are files that came from customers for one reason or another. And by the way, the Details tool is still a work in progress. And I have really got things going slow at this point with all the messing around I've done. The Details tool is still a work in progress. Matter of fact, I just wrote up a suggestion today for something else I would like to see. Oh, I'm sorry, that was the wrong file. I wanted that one. Okay, so this is another customer file. And what we've got in this, right down in here, is the area that he is really interested in. Okay, he's got this entire lot of 83 acres, right? Well, he's got a cabin area down here, and this is the real area of interest. And this file provides us the opportunity to explore some of the things you may need to do with a detail. So let's zoom in on that area down there. And actually, this file came to us during our beta process for details, and it exposed some things that weren't working all that well. All right, so notice we've got some fills. We've got a cabin, a shed, a barn. We've got these labels. This is a lot label. Notice it is outside of this rectangle area here. All right. So let's take a look at how this works. Now we need to blow this up and provide more information in our detail. So we're going to right-click this rectangle and New Detail. Here's that same dialog box we looked at before. Now I want to add something to my caption on this one. I want to add barn, shed, and barn blow up to my caption. If I could type, that would say blow up rather than blow P. Okay, there we go. All right. Yeah, let's put it on the details layer. And then I think I'm going to try for a scale of 100 feet to the inch. You know, I'm at 500 feet to the inch, so I could say a factor of 5. I'm just going to say a scale of 100. I definitely want object labels that are outside the detail, because this, I do want this barn label. That's a lot label in here. And I do want the fills to show up. And in this case, you know what? I want to illustrate something. I'm just going to move this just a bit so that that barn over there, a little bit of it is outside the rectangle. Remember what I said earlier about fills. You're going to see this happen. All right, so I'm going to right-click this and say New Detail. I want 100 feet to the inch, Details Layer, and I want fills. And in this case, I'm going to say edit the detail after it is positioned. So that's automatically going to put it into edit mode. I won't have to do that manually. Say OK, and now I've got this detail. Let's see if I can zoom out and plunk this down over here somewhere. And a couple of problems. Number one is that this label didn't come in because this object is not entirely within. All right. I do have some fills, but I got something going on there. I'm just going to delete this. Oh, and my caption isn't correct. I'm just going to delete this and start over. Oh, and I was in edit mode. See, I forgot I was in edit mode. I'm going to hit enter to end edit mode, and I'm going to delete this entire detail. So it's really easy to start over if you need to. It's always good to show mistakes because everybody makes mistakes. Yes, including me. Too far. Deck. This rectangle is really tight. And this is the rectangle that the user created. So there, that should have everything in it. Let's try that again. New detail. 100 feet to the inch is good. Everything is good. I'm just going to say okay. All right, now let's zoom out a bit. I'm using my scroll wheel to zoom out, and I'll plunk this down. All right, this shouldn't be here. Let's get rid of that. All right. So what we can see, barn is included, but it's way outside. All right. I do have some fills going on. I have not looked at these traverses to see exactly why it's doing this. Okay, but fills are included. All right. Another problem I have is that this is just too big for the space I have available. All right, it's overlapping my property. Oh, see, and I was in edit mode. I'm going to undo that. While I'm in edit mode, it will undo the various things I do here. I'm going to hit my enter key to end edit. But you saw that the rectangle will overlap the property at this scale. I don't have enough room. So I have two options. I can sit here and mess with my drawing, move things around to try and get myself more space, or I could just go into the properties of my group. I did that by double clicking it. I could right click it or double click it. It brings me in here. All right. So I can choose what to do. Now I am in the group properties dialog box. It's basically the same as the new detail dialog box, but it's not quite the same. I don't have all of the same options, but with groups now, I can set a different size, a different factor, size, whatever. Let's try 125 feet to the inch. Say okay. Now it's a little smaller. My caption says 125 feet to the inch. So now I'm not in edit mode. I'm going to control click on deck, move it in here, move cabin over, control click barn, bring it in. All right. Now I can move this around wherever I want it. I could draw a leader if I want to point at this area, whatever I want to do with that. I'm holding my control key. I can double click this scale per inch thing. It's too big. I want to make that an 08. And let's add that text that I didn't get in there. Barn, shed, and barn, shed, and barn blow up. Not quite sure what that means, but that's what it originally said. All right. So, and you know, the other thing I want to do, well, let's just okay that. All right. There it is. Okay. Now, if I want to, I could control double click that again. If I don't want it centered, I could change its alignment, whatever I want to do here. All right. Once again, that is a part of the group. Now, I've got this line label here. I want to get this out of the way. So I'm going to move this around. Maybe something like this. I also need to show some how far from the property line some things are. So I am going to draw a dynamic offset right here. And now left click a start point. I can use I for insert, E for end, M for mid, T for intersect, N for nearest, etc. I'm going to hit E for end. Now I'm going to hold my control key. Remember, I'm not in edit mode, but I want to edit this and add a dynamic offset. So I'm snapping now to that end of the barn. Now I'm going to come down. I'm going to hit a P for perpendicular, hold my control key, and get on that line and left click it. And now I've got the dynamic offset displaying that. If I don't like how that's drawn, I go into my drawing settings and tell Traverse PC how I want my dynamic offset to draw. All right, so you can see now that we're using the drawing settings to control a lot of this stuff. And let's go with that, and let's put solid arrows on it. Okay, and that is now a part of my detail. So if the dynamic offsets are already in here, that's great. That'll work fine. In this case, there just wasn't room to draw any of this stuff beforehand, so we'll draw it after the fact. Okay. So that's about it for editing groups for what I have right now. Okay, one thing I didn't show you, I'm going to come back over here. I'm going to hold my control key while I'm on the caption, and I'm going to move the caption to the top. So I can move this caption wherever I want. In the title block, there is drawing over lettering. Can we fix that? We could. It's just because of the way I named this file. All right. So this is, once again, this is a group. Actually, it wasn't a group. It wasn't even a group. I just dragged that text to the left. All right. So it was just the file name. I named this file appropriate for today's webinar. Okay. That's all that was. If that were a group, I would hold the control key and I could drag and drop it, or I could do whatever I want. Maybe I don't want to even include the file name. Be up to you. You could hold the control key, right click it, and delete it if you wanted. How do I get my leaders to default to solid arrows nonstop? I draft in black and white. How do I get the settings to stay after I update my program? Okay, good question. A little bit off topic, but a little bit on topic as well. All right, so that's your third character. I hope you all got all three of those. Here is your answer, John. You already know, leaders, dynamic offsets, they are all controlled by your drawing settings, right? I can right-click the background, go to drawing settings. I could go to tools, drawing settings, same thing, all right? All of these drawing settings are stored on the drawing. They are a part of this drawing, and they may vary from this drawing to the next drawing, all right? So that's the first thing you need to know. Every one of these settings, whether it's leaders, background clearing, object labels, interior angles, dynamic offsets, dimensions, crow's feet, all of these things are stored within this drawing. Well, guess what? Because our drawing templates are really just drawings without any traverses on them, all of these drawing settings are stored on your drawing templates. So here is my recommendation to everyone. In your drawing templates, if there are things that you're always changing, go to your drawings, go to drawings, create a new drawing, choose whichever template you want. I recommend you work through all of your templates. Okay, and say okay. And now I have a new drawing using that drawing template. At this point, I would go to my traverses. I would untag all my traverses. So I'm just dealing with stuff that's on the template. Now I would go into my drawing settings. How do I want my leaders to draw? Well, I want solid lines. I want a solid arrow. That looks good. Do I want to go to the center or the edge? Let's go to the edge. Okay, that's how I want my leaders drawn. Let's see, do I want clear background turned on? You know, I'm not sure I want it on all survey space text. Yeah, we'll leave that way. Go to object labels. How do I want these to draw? Well, I want Arial font, etc., etc. How do I, if I do something, if I draw something that uses crow's feet, do I want those to display? If I dimension something, how do I want them to display? Dynamic offsets, interior angles, same thing. Set these up the way you will normally want them. Once you get that done, you come back in here and you go to Tools and you choose Save Drawing as a Template, and you override the template you were just in. Now this template, the next time I create a drawing from that template, it will be set, all of those drawing settings will be set the way I want them. In addition now, if you update your program, if a major release, like you're running the TPC Desktop 2021 right now, and next year 2022 comes out, you need to copy your templates forward. That's one of the options when you install a major release, is to copy everything forward. So that's how you take care of that. You just bring your templates forward. Once they are set the way you want with all of your drawing settings, then you're all set. Aren't we all, John? Aren't we all? Okay. Well, I thank you all for joining me. I apologize for my sinuses and the various hazards we've run into today, but then that's live TV. So all you guys, thank you for joining me. I hope it was helpful. Have a great rest of your day, rest of your week, and keep on staying safe out there. Don't want to lose any of you. Thank you very much.